in the midst of that complexity, again, the biggest thing we can't lose sight of is that the single most important point is that connection really is everything, right? It shouldn't be an effort to check the box on the number of languages that your site has been translated into, or the number of different country sites that you might have as a large global organization. This complexity I was talking about makes delivering connected experiences both increasingly challenging and increasingly important. It's why we need to invest in the content needed to support personalization and the technology that's necessary to enable it. But really, all too often, organizations that overlook the value of diversity and inclusion as part of their personalization strategy. Again, they're focused on kind of checking the box on the number of languages they translated the site into, and they're not really valuing diversity and inclusion and the role it has in connecting with their audiences. They focus more on personalizing the next best offer or selling to their customers instead of really trying to authentically connect with them. And when we look at the value in establishing a connection, there's plenty of statistics to back this up. So we just grabbed a few, but they're obvious. The importance of connecting with your audiences in their own languages is really innate. I think all of us would get this. We don't need to see stats to understand this. We put ourselves in the shoes of our customers or the audiences that we serve or want to connect with. We all understand that everybody would prefer to be engaged in their own language. We're going to be more likely to feel a connection to a brand and more likely to purchase their products if we feel like they're making an authentic effort to connect with us. And the other thing that we wanted to make sure that we didn't lose sight of is that really the importance of this for all organizations. The reality is all organizations can do a better job of valuing diversity and inclusion. Even if you're not a large global organization and you just maybe had an interest in global content strategy and you joined us today for the webinar, you don't need to be rolling this out globally to understand the importance of connecting locally and meeting your audiences and customers where they are. And your organization almost certainly should be doing this both because it values diversity and inclusion and because diversity and inclusion is valuable to your organization. You know, healthcare is a good example of this. Leading organizations are beginning to understand that localizing content really has a direct correlation to access to care, and that you really need to think about a content strategy in much the same way as you would if you were a large global organization. And this is true for a lot of industries. You know, the statistics is important that 20% of the United States population speaks a different language at home. That's something that we all shouldn't lose sight of.
Yeah, I think I'll just chime in there, Brian, is a lot of times when we start talking with clients about their translation process or approach to things, they tend to start to look outside of the U.S. And the reality is, like the last slide said, a lot of folks here within the United States have English as a second language. And so if we want to make real connections with the communities that we serve, then we have to understand what's the best way to make those connections. And like we saw previously, having those language options that are most comfortable for people is the first step in that process, but it's only the first step, and we're going to talk about some other steps as part of a globalization strategy today.